Can you fire pottery in a barbecue grill? Last year I made a video to answer that question, and the answer was yes and no. The pottery did in fact get fired, but it took an exceptional amount of fuel and it took all day long. So the barbecue as a way to fire pottery has some limitations. When I made that video, I said I was going to think of ways to make an improvement on the barbecue firing method and come back and revisit the subject. And that's what I'm doing today. So I'm going to make some modifications to the grill that are going to improve its ability to fire pottery and see if I can't make a really effective backyard kiln out of my barbecue. The problems with the barbecue grill as a kiln primarily are in two specific areas. The first one is the size. The size of the grill limits the size of pottery you can fire in it. And not so much the diameter of the grill as the height. I need a lot more depth in order to get that pot in there and get it surrounded by fuel so that I can get it up to temp. The other problem is airflow. This thing took all day to fire because I just wasn't getting enough air in there. And so I'm going to solve those problems in two ways. First, I'm going to use this bucket to increase the size of my firing chamber vertically, giving me more space for the pottery and the fuel. And second, I'm going to drill holes in the bottom of this grill and get that up to temp in a shorter period of time. That should let in at least twice as much air. And all those holes are beneath that interior grill level, so they won't get clogged up with charcoal. So I'm trying to cut the bottom out of this bucket, and I couldn't figure out why the saw wouldn't cut. And then I looked at the blade. I put the saw blade in backwards. Seriously. So once I flipped it around, it actually cut pretty fast. Okay, now that I've removed the bottom and the bail from this bucket, let me show you what I have in mind. Because I said my limitation here, there's a certain limitation in the width of it, but more in the depth, because if you're grilling a steak, you don't need any depth, right? It's almost two-dimensional. But with a pot, you've got to cover that pot in fuel, so you need more depth. That's where this comes in. So this is just slightly under the diameter of the barbecue, and this will give me a lot more depth, and I will be able to pour the charcoal in the top and fill it up to at least, over the top of the pot. The problem now is that the bucket is just slightly under, maybe an inch under the diameter of the barbecue. So I need some way to kind of hold it right there at the top. So I'm going to put some little screws in around the edge that'll kind of rest on the outside of the barbecue. Let's see how that works now. I think that's going to work just fine. The screws aren't real rigid, they're a little wobbly, so I think if I was going to use this long term, I would want to find a better solution. But certainly for one firing, it'll be fine. Okay, my kiln is ready. I still have to get my pot ready. So here's the pot I'm going to be firing. It's this little stirrup pot I made in the Ancient Potters Club last month. Because I didn't know how long this project was going to take, getting my kiln ready, I haven't started preheating my pot yet. So I need to put this in my oven on low for about a half hour. That will make sure that all the moisture is cooked out of this clay, so I won't have any breakage. After that's done, I'll be ready to start firing. There's a million ways to fire pottery, And this is just one possibility. When I first started doing YouTube, I thought, well, the way I fire pottery is, the good way to do it. And since then, I've had my mind open just by talking to people from all over the world who send me emails or make comments on my videos, and they say things like, I'm firing in my chimenea, or I'm firing in my fireplace, or I'm firing in my wood stove. All kinds of crazy things that I would have told you before I started, no way you can fire in a chimenea. But there are many ways to fire pottery, and there are some ways that nobody's even figured out yet that maybe you can figure out. So if you're interested in learning more about alternative methods of firing pottery, you can't do better than my online masterclass, Outdoor Pottery Firing 101, because in that class, I not only go in depth in the ways of firing pottery that I'm good at, those on the surface and in a shallow pit type of firings, I also go into a little bit of the science of it. I talk about different kinds of wood. I talk about, airflow and all these kind of principles that affect your firing no matter how you're firing. So if you want to learn more about that class, go to my website, ancientpottery.how, and check out that Outdoor Pottery Firing 101 Masterclass. Okay, it's about 6 o'clock. I put this in at 3, so it's been 3 hours. I do a fair number of these sort of Tony Soares style charcoal firings using my bricks around. So I have a good idea of the amount of time it should take. And by now, it should be burned down to mostly just ash. And it's hot. It's too hot to pull out, but it's all burned up. And as you can see, there's still a lot of charcoal in there burning. So again, still burning way slower than it should. So this really is still not working optimally. More air is what we need here. It's way too much like if I fire pottery in a pit and I just dig a deep pit and put the pot down in it, it's not going to, circulate air good, and it's not going to fire properly. And I think that's kind of where we're at. We've created, this deep pit, and even though we're getting some air from the bottom, not enough. At this point, the sun's about to set. Going to get dark out here, so I'm going to wait until morning to open this up and see how the pot. That way you can get the best view of it, on camera. So I'm not super happy with it, but I'm going to go ahead and let this continue to burn into the night, and then we will open it up in the morning. Okay, I think that worked out pretty good. It definitely was an improvement over the last time I fired in a barbecue. Could it use some more improvements? Sure. Definitely could use more oxygen. The burn was slower than usual when I used the bricks, the Tony Soares method. So you still are not getting enough oxygen in there, or as much as you could. And I feel like the top of this pot didn't fire as hard as the bottom, as hot. You can see that it's well oxidized down here in that it's, shades of brown and orange, whereas up here, it's not. It's a very different color. And also when you tap it with your finger, it's a little clinky down here, but it's a little more earthen sounding up here. So I think probably this top is significantly underfired. So I could probably fire this again and get better results. Somehow, as those coals burned down, it kind of left the top exposed, perhaps before it got up to temp. It was very slow getting up to temp. When I was out there at 6, I felt like it was just maybe then getting up to temp. Although it's very hard to measure the temperature in a firing like that. I suppose you could drill a hole in the bucket, run a thermocouple in, and set it right next to the pot and get a pretty reasonable temperature, but you can't really get in there with your infrared gun very well. I tried a couple times and I got temperatures in the 600 range right on the neck, which isn't hot enough, so hopefully it got hotter, but I'm just not sure it did. So there are some problems with it. Really, if you're looking to fire and you live in a, you know, a small space, an apartment building or something, I think you could do better than the barbecue. Really, with the bricks, on, like, if you just find a piece of land somewhere, or even like, maybe even like a patio deck, you know, as long as you have dirt or cement board or something underneath it to protect that surface from the fire, then I think that's a better solution. And I have some ideas. I have some ideas for firing with charcoal that might be better than brick and are certainly better than the barbecue. So look for those in a future video. Pretty soon, within the next month or so, I'm going to try this idea I have. In the meantime, if you'd like to see that video where I first fired in the barbecue, I learned a lot in that video, I will link that up right over here so you can go check that out. I appreciate you watching today. I'll catch you next time.